This video is going to teach you how to name amides, which are a particular kind of derivative of carboxylic acids. Just to review, the derivatives that we've learned about so far are carboxylate salts, acid chlorides, anhydrides, and esters. Today we're going to learn about amides. Amides are derivatives of carboxylic acids because instead of having the OH, they have a nitrogen attached to that position, and then the nitrogen, having a possibility of 3 bonds, may have hydrogens or other carbon groups on them. So this is the general structure of an amide. The naming system for amides is the same for both common and IUPAC systems. Take whichever name of the carboxylic acid you prefer and change the ending OIC, and then the word acid, change that to the ending AMIDE, amide. So this compound in the common system is propionic acid. That's the common name. In the IUPAC system, it's propanoic acid. This is common. This is IUPAC. Again, to change it to an amide, assuming for the moment that the nitrogen has 2 hydrogens on it, this would be propion. Notice the propion in that name, and then without leaving a space or a dash or anything, just amide. So this compound in the common system is propionamide. In the IUPAC system, propanoamide. So all we're doing is taking off the IC and putting on AMIDE. So that's propanoamide. Next feature, if the nitrogen has other groups attached to it other than just hydrogens, you need to put them in front of the name, just like you would with any other group that might be attached to a molecule. But the question is, how do we indicate that they're attached to the nitrogen and not attached somewhere else in the molecule? So let's do an example. Here is a compound. Notice it has a carbon chain, C double bond O, and then a single bond nitrogen, so it's an amide. And then it has, in this particular case, a methyl group and an ethyl group, both on the nitrogen. How are we going to name that? Well, the common name for the corresponding carboxylic acid, 1, 2, 3, 4 carbons, is butyric acid. Butyric acid. So we're going to change the name to butyramide. So without the methyl and the ethyl groups on there, that would be butyramide. How do we indicate that there's a methyl on the nitrogen and an ethyl on the nitrogen? In front of the name, we're going to write capital N, ethyl, capital N, methyl, and I haven't left enough room, but you get the idea. N, ethyl, N, methyl, butyramide. This is the first time I think we've seen in a name that we're using a capital letter to indicate where a group is attached, and typically that's only going to happen with nitrogen. So if we have an ethyl group on this carbon, let's say, that would be 1, 2, 3 ethyl. If we have an ethyl group on the nitrogen, that's going to be N-ethyl. So that's the system. This is the common name. What would the IUPAC name for that be? N-ethyl, N-methyl butanoamide, because it would be based on butanoic acid as the IUPAC system name for that. Let's just do a couple more examples, and then I'll give you a chance to try some on your own. See if you can name, and we'll work on it together, this compound. Let's put 2 propyl groups on the nitrogen this time. how are we going to name that compound? Well, the basic carboxylic acid would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 carbons. So pentanoic acid. So we're going to change the ending to amide, so pentanoamide. And then it's just a matter of indicating where the groups are, or what the groups are and where they're attached. We'll notice that in the IUPAC system, which is the name I'm using here, that's carbon number 1, 2, 3, 4. So we have a methyl group at carbon number 4. And we have 2 propyl groups at carbon number N. It's actually not a carbon, obviously. So how are we going to name that? 4-methyl N dipropyl. And that just illustrates the point that if you have 2 groups that are the same as each other on the nitrogen, as we do in this case, 2 propyl groups, you have to put in the capital N twice, once for each of the 2 groups, and then you have to use the prefix di to indicate that there are 2 of them. Okay, I'll give you a chance to name a compound now. Okay, there's a compound for you to name. So turn off the video now. Katie, don't turn off the video. Those of you watching the video, pause it for a moment and work on naming that compound. And then when you have an answer, restart the video and we'll see you in just a minute. Welcome back. Let's try naming this compound. What is the carboxylic acid that it's based on? Obviously the benzene ring and the C double bond O. If there was an OH there, that would be called benzoic acid. So we're going to write benzamide. Now you might very well, in your name, have written benzoamide, because that's the rule. You take off the IC and you put on AMIDE. This is one of those cases where it's just an exception. In the case of benzoic acid, you don't change it. You take off the O as well, so it's benzamide. That would be the name of the compound if it were just the benzene ring, the C double bond O, and then an NH2. But in this case, we also have another group attached to the nitrogen. So how are we going to indicate that? Well, first of all, what is the group? It's a butyl group. And it is attached to the nitrogen, so it's going to be N-butyl benzamide, and there should be no space in there. Okay, so here's the question. Is that the common name, or is that the IUPAC name, or is it both? Well, it's pretty much both. However, one little detail that might change between the 2 systems is, since there's more than one kind of butyl group, in the common system you have to indicate which butyl group is it. Is it N-butyl, isobutyl, T-butyl, or sec-butyl? In this case it's N-butyl. So if we were giving this a common name, we would actually put capital N, small n, butyl benzamide. The capital N indicating that it's on the nitrogen, the small n indicating that it's N-butyl as opposed to isobutyl or some other type of butyl group. If this were the IUPAC name, you wouldn't put in that little n there, and the assumption when you say butyl is that it's N-butyl. If it were isobutyl, it wouldn't be called butyl, it would be called 2-methyl propyl, a completely different name for that group. Okay, let's try another example. Okay, turn off the video, or just pause the video, work on naming that compound, and when you think you have an answer, restart the video, and we will work on it together then. See you in a minute. Welcome back. Here is the system by which you should name this compound. First of all, notice that there are 4 carbons, and it's based on a dicarboxylic acid. So should we try to do this in the common system, or should we try to do it in the IUPAC? Probably both. Let's try the common first. What carboxylic acid or dicarboxylic acid is that a derivative of? Oh my, it's succinic acid. So succinic acid becomes succinamide. And we're essentially done. And we don't have any other groups attached. We don't have anything, we don't have to number it or anything, because in the dicarboxylic acids, if you remember, they have to be at the ends of a chain. So by saying succinamide, that's essentially it. Now, if there had been groups on one or the other of these nitrogens, we'd have to put N with some group name in there. If there were groups on both of the nitrogens, we'd have to use an N and an N prime to indicate that one of the groups was on one of the nitrogens and the other group was on the other nitrogen. If there were groups attached to either of these carbons, we'd have to put them in front with alphas or betas or both to indicate where the groups are attached. But in this case, it's just succinamide. What's its IUPAC name going to be? What's the name of the dicarboxylic acid it's derived from? 4 carbons, so that's butanoic acid. Don't remember how we handled dicarboxylic acids. We put the little prefix in front of the ending, so it's butane dioic acid. To make it an amide, we're going to change the IC to AMIDE. So it's butane dioamide. Notice IOA, all separate syllables there is pronounced dioamide or dioamide. You sometimes see it pronounced amide or amide. Okay, let's do one more example here and let you work on it, and then we'll do it together. How about okay, so pause the video right now and we'll come back in a minute after you've had a chance to work on the problem. Welcome back. Here's how we're going to name the system. Notice that it's again a 4-carbon dicarboxylic acid, so it's going to be based on butane dioic acid, but instead it's butane dioamide. No groups on either of the nitrogens, so we don't have to have any capital N's in front of it. But notice that we do have a double bond in the molecule, and we have a methyl group attached to one of the carbons. So that means we have to start numbering the dicarboxylic acid from one end or the other. Which end are we going to start numbering from? Well, the first rule is going to say number from the end closest to the double bond. But if we start there as number 1, we get to the double bond at number 2. If we start there as number 1, we get to the double bond as number 2. So that doesn't help us. So now we have to fall back on where is the methyl group attached. So if we start here, 1, 2, 3, the methyl group's at carbon 3. If we start here, 1, 2, the methyl group's at carbon 2. So we're going to number it that way. The methyl group is closer to this end of the molecule than to that end of the molecule. Okay, so how do we indicate where the double bond is? We put a 2 in front of this name, and we change the A of butane to butene. So it's 2-butene dioamide. And we also have to indicate that there's a methyl group at carbon number 2, so 2-methyl. Is that what you had written down? I hope so. That is the end of the lesson for today. Thank you.